He thought she was the victim. But when the bullet pierced the traitor's chest, everything truly began. Some betrayals are not for money, not for love, but for a truth more terrifying than death itself. I poured myself a glass of red wine as the clock struck 11 p.m. The house was still lit, but it felt cold, as though the light wasn't enough to chase away the emptiness inside me. Lynn wasn't home. Another night. My phone buzzed, just as I expected. A short, emotionless message. I have an urgent meeting with a client. Go to sleep first. Client. At 11 p.m. The strange scent of cologne still lingered faintly on the scarf she hastily tossed over the chair earlier that afternoon. I wasn't a fool to believe such clumsy lies, but I wasn't insane enough to blow up when I didn't yet have the cards in my hand. I sipped my wine, eyes resting on the large mirror in the living room. The reflection wasn't just me. It was the exhaustion of a man far too familiar with silence and deception. Lynn used to mean everything to me, a smart, alluring woman full of ambition. But perhaps it was that very ambition that devoured the simplicity we once built together. Things began to change 3 months ago. Sudden meetings, hastily deleted texts when I came near, and especially the eyes that constantly avoided mine when I asked how her day went. But the thing that made me certain was a seemingly trivial detail: her smile. The smile she gave someone over the phone, one afternoon when I quietly entered the house. It wasn't for me. It was a soft, giggly, suggestive smile, like the ones she used to wear in her 20s when she wanted to win someone over. I stood behind a half-closed door, silently listening to that laughter fade into the void. In that moment, I knew. I was no longer the only person in her world. But I didn't confront her. I chose to observe. I began recording the times she came home late, the strange cafe receipts in her purse, the faint traces of men's cologne on her coat. Not to hold on, but to prepare for something greater, the truth. Tonight, as the wine glass emptied, I opened my laptop, accessing a hidden folder I had created weeks ago. Inside was everything I needed: schedules, screenshots, even audio recordings of her speaking intimately with a man named Dat. I had never met him, but his name came up often enough for me to know. He wasn't just a business partner. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Lynn. An unknown number. I picked up. A hoarse voice spoke. Is this an? Yes. Who is this? I'm Khan, the husband of the woman Dat is seeing. I think we should meet. I smiled coldly, colder than ever. I've been waiting for this call. Outside, the rain began to fall. Rain is always the start of a bigger storm. And I knew tonight's wine was just the first glass in a long feast of revenge. The rain outside fell harder, each drop pounding against the window pane like a rhythm to the storm of thoughts swirling in my mind. I glanced at my phone screen. Khan's number still displayed, a reminder that this game had officially begun. We arranged to meet at a small coffee shop tucked away in a quiet alley. 9 a.m. The sky was still gloomy after last night's rain, the cold air biting, as if foreshadowing the ominous things to come. Khan sat there, easy to spot in the deserted space. A man in his 30s, gaunt face but eyes sharp as blades, the eyes of someone who had suffered enough cuts from betrayal. I pulled out a chair without any need for polite greetings. How long? I asked bluntly. Khan smirked slightly, his gaze fixed on the steaming cup of coffee. Over 4 months. I noticed when she started coming home smelling like a man who wasn't me. I nodded and handed him an envelope. Inside were copies of the evidence I had gathered, photos of Lynn and Dat leaving a hotel, recordings of their flirtatious conversations, and messages Lynn thought she had deleted. Khan reviewed each item without a flicker of emotion, but his clenched fists turned his knuckles white. What are you planning to do? Khan's voice was low, laced with danger. I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting to the street where people passed by, indifferent, as if no one in this world was being stabbed in the back. I don't care about holding on. I just want them to pay. What about you? Khan let out a dry, hollow laugh, like he hadn't felt anything in a long time. I thought about beating him up or exposing her to both families. But then I realized that's far too light. I gently swirled my coffee, agreeing silently. Betrayal didn't deserve momentary anger. It needed a longer sentence, something that would haunt the betrayer forever. I have a plan, I said, locking eyes with Khan. But I need you in. Khan was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. Tell me. That evening, I returned to the same cold house, the empty chair by the dining table still waiting. Lynn wasn't home. I was used to it. I picked up my phone and sent a message I knew she'd read immediately. I know everything, Lynn, but I'm still waiting for you to tell me the truth. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Lynn. I let it ring a few times before answering. What are you talking about? No what? Her voice was rushed, tinged with panic. I smiled, but my voice was ice. About Dad. And the nights you lied to me. Silence. I could hear her swallow hard. You're misunderstanding. Don't waste your breath. I cut her off. Tomorrow, I want to meet. At our usual coffee spot. If you still respect this marriage even a little, be there. I hung up before she could say more. The next morning, Lynn arrived. She was still beautiful, composed with light makeup, but her eyes betrayed her worry. I sat there, an envelope identical to the one I gave Khan placed on the table. What do you want? Lynn asked, trying to stay calm. I pushed the envelope toward her. This is everything I have, but I won't give it to anyone else, on one condition. Lynn opened it, her face paling as she saw the undeniable evidence. She looked up, fear and confusion swirling in her eyes. What condition? I leaned back, speaking slowly. Sign the divorce papers. No lawsuits. No division of assets. And leave this city. Forever. Lynn bit her lip, her hands trembling. What if I don't agree? I smirked, colder than ever. Then these will be sent to your boss, your family, and Dad's wife. Lynn bowed her head. She knew I wasn't bluffing. 3 days later, the divorce was signed. Lynn left without a word of farewell. But the story didn't end there. That evening, I met Khan again. He placed a photo in front of me. Dad, kneeling before an unfamiliar man, face pale as death. He's in deep debt, and with just a little push, he'll never get back up. I looked at the photo, feeling no satisfaction. The thrill of revenge didn't last as long as I'd imagined. End it, I said. This is enough. Khan's eyes still flickered with hatred, but he eventually nodded. I returned to my empty house and poured myself a glass of wine. This time, not to start a storm, but to end everything. I looked into the large mirror, seeing myself, but a different man. No longer resigned, nor consumed by vengeance. Just a man who had learned to let go. Outside, the rain had stopped, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. The rain had stopped outside, but inside me, something still hadn't settled. The peace I thought I had grasped turned out to be just a thin veil hiding deeper storms. 3 days later, I received an envelope with no sender. Inside was a photo. Lynn and Dad, but not at a cafe or hotel like before. They were in a strange room, surrounded by documents and contracts. On the back, scrawled in messy handwriting. Did you really think it was over? Some games, you were never the player. A chill ran through my body. I immediately called Khan. Did you send me anything? No. What's going on? Khan's voice was calm, but I could sense a hint of caution. I told him about the photo. Silence lingered on the other end before Khan finally spoke quietly. Maybe we've been dragged into a much bigger game. What do you mean? Khan sighed, as if weighing something difficult to say. I just got word. That isn't just a cheating bastard. He's tied to a money laundering ring. And Lynn might not just be a victim of temptation. My grip tightened around the phone, my palms slick with cold sweat. You're saying she's part of it? I'm not sure. But if someone sent you that photo, it means we're being watched. And they want us to know, don't think you've won. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, lit only by the glow of my laptop screen, reopening all the files I thought were finished. Every photo, every recording, now looked different. No longer just proof of personal betrayal, but fragments of a far more dangerous puzzle. A soft click echoed from the door. I jumped up. Someone had slipped something through the gap. A USB. No note. No message. I plugged it into my laptop. A series of video files appeared. I clicked on one. The blurry footage showed Lynn sitting across from a man in a black suit. A voice came through the speakers. You know the conditions. If you don't want your husband dragged into this, follow the plan. Lynn bit her lip and nodded. I felt my whole body go cold. So, she'd been forced into this game long ago. And I, thinking I was in control, was nothing more than a pawn being used. My phone rang again. This time, it was Lynn's number. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice cracked. You know now, don't you? Who's controlling you? I asked directly. Lynn was silent for a few seconds before sighing deeply. It's not just me. You're in their sights too. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner. I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. Meet me. One last time. Lynn agreed. We chose a riverside cafe, a place we used to frequent when we were newlyweds. Quiet enough to hear every heartbeat. When Lynn arrived, she was no longer the proud woman I once knew. Just a tired figure, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders frail. I have no way out, Lynn said, her voice trembling. They control everything. Finances, work, even our lives. I looked deep into her eyes, for the first time in months, free of anger or resentment. Then we can't play by their rules anymore. Lynn looked up, a faint glimmer of hope in her eyes. You have a plan? I nodded, pulling out the USB someone had sent me. To break this game, we flipped the board. But I knew, to pull this off, I needed Khan, a man who shared the same enemy. This wasn't just about me and Lynn anymore. It was a war, small pawns fighting against invisible hands pulling the strings behind the scenes. The game had just begun, and once we stepped into it, there was no turning back. That night, the three of us, Lynn, Khan, and I, met in a small room on the outskirts of the city. Khan had said it was the place with the fewest eyes and ears. The room was bare, one old table, 3 chairs, and a dim yellow light, like a scene from a noir film. Lynn sat silently, her hands tightly clasped. Khan, on the other hand, had transformed, colder, sharper, more calculating than ever. I spread the contents of the USB across the table. Clips, recordings, a list of unfamiliar names. People connected to the underground network Dat and his associates operated. Khan skimmed through, his eyes stopping at one name. Tran Hudong. He read slowly. The boss behind it all. Head of the shell company Dat works for. No one dares touch him. I looked at Khan, my voice firm. We don't need to touch him. We just need to make him feel the authorities are breathing down his neck. Lynn raised her head, a faint spark of hope lighting her eyes. What do you mean? I opened my laptop, typing rapidly. A mock interface of an investigation agency appeared on the screen. I had an old friend in IT, enough to build a convincing digital smokescreen. We leak information, just enough data to scare them. Make Dung think there's a traitor in his ranks. Khan smirked, catching on immediately. And when he suspects Dat, he'll eliminate him himself. I nodded. Divide and conquer. Sometimes, your enemy's fear is your best weapon. Lynn still hesitated, her eyes brimming with tears. But if this plan fails, we'll die. I looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, better to die fighting than live forever as prey. 3 days later, news of a secret police investigation suddenly appeared on an underground forum, a place I knew Dung's men frequented. The fake data was leaked, along with a single line. The traitor is closer than you think. Within 24 hours, I got a message from Khan. Dat had disappeared. No one saw him at the company. His phone was off, his house abandoned. Rumors spread fast. Dung had made his move. But I knew Dung wasn't someone easily fooled for long. And right on cue, that evening, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered. A deep, steel-cold voice spoke. You're clever, but being too clever gets you killed early. I gripped the phone tightly, replying calmly. I'm just returning what you people sowed. A sneer echoed through the line. I'm giving you one chance. Hand over everything you have and disappear from this city. If not, don't blame me when your ex-wife ends up floating in the river. I hung up. My heart pounded, but my mind stayed clear. Lynn stood behind me, pale as a sheet after hearing what I relayed. Khan slammed his fist onto the table. We're out of time. We have to end this now. I nodded. It was time for the final blow. That night, we sent the real data, the only backup I kept, to a renowned investigative journalist, someone known for exposing major scandals. No need to reveal ourselves. No names. Just a simple note. If you want the truth, this is your last chance. 2 days later, the media exploded. Biggest money laundering and racketeering ring uncovered. Several officials suspected of involvement. Dung had no choice but to flee. But I knew, with crimes like his, it was only a matter of time before he was caught. As for me, Lynn, and Khan, we vanished from the city before anyone could trace us. 3 months later, I was living in a small seaside town, where the waves were strong enough to wash away dark memories. I opened a little coffee shop. Khan would occasionally send a text, always the same line. We owe each other a winning hand. Lynn, she chose to leave for another country, starting over from scratch. The last time we parted, she said, "Thank you for not just saving me, but for saving yourself from hatred." I stood on the shore, coffee in hand, watching the sun sink into a blazing red horizon. Finally, I understood one thing. Revenge doesn't bring peace. Only by letting go can we truly be free. The wind carried the salty scent of the sea. I smiled faintly. The game was over, and I was the one left standing. The sea breeze kept blowing, carrying with it a tranquility I thought would be mine forever. Every morning, I brewed coffee, rearranged books on the shelves, and watched sunlight spill across the window pane. Everything seemed normal, until one drizzly afternoon, when a customer walked in, a tall, slender man wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses despite the overcast sky. He ordered a black coffee and quietly sat in the corner by the window. No one paid him much attention, except me, because on the hand holding his cup was a small tattoo on his thumb, a black eye, faded but haunting. I'd seen that symbol before, in an old dossier Khan sent me before disappearing without a trace. It belonged to a syndicate far larger than anything Lin and I had faced. A group that even Tran Hu Dung answered to, the final boss I once thought I had defeated. I showed no reaction. Silently, I pulled out an old phone without a SIM card, used only for recording and sending anonymous signals. I sent a message. "He's here. Symbol, black eye. I need intel." Within 10 minutes, my phone vibrated. A reply from a hidden address. "His name is Vu, former commander over Dung. He's the cleaner, the one who finishes what others couldn't." I exhaled slowly, steady. I knew the game wasn't over. It had just moved to a new level. That night, after closing the shop, I walked back to my small house by the sea. The rain still drizzled lightly. When I opened the door, the porch light flicked on. On the table, someone had left an envelope. No address, no sender. I opened it. Just a single handwritten line in black ink. "The one you saved wasn't the one who needed saving most." Inside was a photo. I froze. It was Khan, collapsed in a strange room, blood soaking his shirt. Behind him stood a woman, her face hidden beneath long, falling hair, typing on her phone. No timestamp, no location. But one detail made me nearly drop the photo. The ring on the woman's hand. Our wedding ring, mine and Lynn's. I didn't sleep that night. I dug through all my old data, images, recordings, encrypted files I once thought useless. I traced every email Lynn had used, every account code I'd glimpsed in Dung's records. And then, I found something I hadn't expected. Lynn had never left the country. Her passport had no exit stamps. Under a different name, she was still here. Worse, working for Vu. That night, I sat before the mirror. No longer the weary man from a year ago. No longer the one clinging to a glass of wine in silent betrayal. I looked straight at myself and whispered, "If you really betrayed me, this time, I won't forgive." 3 days later, I followed Lynn's last trace. An anonymous bank account receiving regular payments from a shell company I knew belonged to Vu. I tracked it to a skyscraper in the city center. 17th floor, Green Horizon. A name that sounded harmless, but was actually a front for those pulling strings behind the curtain. I wasn't stupid enough to barge in. I sat at a cafe across the street, watching all afternoon. And then, I saw her. Lynn. She stepped out of the elevator, still elegant as ever, but her eyes had changed. Cold. Wary. Nothing like the woman who once cried before me in regret. I pulled out a phone and dialed a secret number, connecting to someone I swore I'd only contact if there was no other choice. A raspy voice answered. "Thought you'd hung up your boots, and I need a favor. One last time. It's about Lynn, isn't it?" He asked directly. I stayed silent, then softly replied, "Yes." Alongside then, "Send me the location. But remember, once you drag her into the light, there's no going back." I hung up, my eyes still fixed on Lynn as she stepped into a waiting black car. Inside me, thousands of questions raged. Was she truly a traitor? Or was she being forced? But deep down, I knew some lines, once crossed, can't be undone, no matter the reason. That night, I received a message from the shadowy man, once a ghost in the underworld. "Lynn will be at the villa outskirts at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Vu will be there too. I'll clear a path for you." I stared at the message, my heart heavy. This wasn't just life and death. This was facing my past, and the woman I once loved more than life itself. 9 p.m., the villa on the outskirts. The mansion stood amidst a pine forest, surrounded by tight security. I slipped through a hidden trail at the back, using the security map the ghost had sent me. When I reached the second-floor window, I heard voices inside. Vu's deep, grating voice. "You did well, Lin, and has taken the bait completely." I held my breath. Lin's voice followed, so cold I barely recognized it. "He's predictable. Emotions have always been his weakness." My heart clenched painfully. Vu chuckled, pouring himself a drink. "Tomorrow, when he arrives, I want you to finish this. One bullet, straight to the chest." Silence. Vu's voice hardened. "You owe me your family's life. Don't forget that." I stepped back, my mind spinning. So Lin had truly switched sides. For survival? For power? I could no longer tell. But I knew one thing. I wouldn't die by her hand. Not out of fear, but because I hadn't said my final words yet. That night, I left an envelope on Lin's desk, quietly, just like how she once walked out of my life. A single line inside. "If you're still the Lin I knew, remember, I was never a man easily controlled by emotions." Along with it, a USB containing all evidence against Vu and his network, encrypted and set to auto-send to the police if I didn't cancel the command within 24 hours. The day of reckoning. I walked into the villa, exactly as Lin and Vu had planned. Lin stood there, gun in hand, eyes empty. Vu lounged in his chair, smirking arrogantly. "End it, Lin." She raised the gun, aiming straight at me. I didn't move. I just looked at her. No hatred, only sorrow. "Will you do it?" I asked calmly. Her hand trembled slightly. 1 second. 2 seconds. Bang. The shot rang out. But the bullet didn't hit me. It buried itself in Vu's chest. His eyes widened in shock, unable to comprehend before collapsing. Lin gasped, tears streaming as she held the gun. "Did you really think I'd kill you?" I stepped forward, wrapping her in a tight embrace, feeling my heart shatter from months of doubt and pain. I didn't know, but I hoped. 3 hours later, the police stormed in. My USB had sent the remote command, right on time. Lin agreed to cooperate, revealing everything about the organization and what she was forced to do to protect her family. I stood outside the interrogation room, watching her through the glass, my heart heavy. When Lin walked out, she smiled through her tears. "I have to go to end this once and for all." I nodded, not holding her back. "I'll wait. Not for the past, but because we deserve a different beginning." 1 year later, on the familiar shoreline, I sat in my little cafe. The wind still blew. A woman walked in, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, half her face hidden, but I recognized her the moment our eyes met. "Lin." She approached my table, softly asking, "Is my seat still open?" I smiled, sliding a cup of coffee towards her. "Always." Outside, the waves crashed gently against the shore. No more rain. No more blood. Just two people, once lost in dangerous games, now finding their way home. Because sometimes, forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the only way to truly live after everything. Years later, rumors still floated around about a nameless cafe in a small seaside town. The owner, a quiet man, brewed 2 cups of coffee every morning, even when he sat alone. No one knew his past. Only those who visited on a calm afternoon would tell stories of once seeing him sit across from a woman. She wore a wide-brimmed hat, her eyes sad yet filled with a strange peace. They barely spoke, just sat in silence, as if the world around them no longer mattered. Then she left, leaving behind a wildflower, small but resilient, growing from cracks that seemed barren. Since that day, he continued to brew 2 cups daily, not out of waiting, but because he understood. Some people, even if they can't walk with us to the end, teach us how to move forward, with trust, forgiveness, and a love that needs no promises. Outside, the waves still kissed the shore, and in that little cafe, a seat always remained empty, not to await someone's return, but as a reminder. If love slips through your fingers, at least, remember how to smile when you think of it.